Father Matthew Spencer, as I mentioned, is with us today as our spiritual director, and we're talking about having a happy death. And what does that mean? How can you have a happy death? How can your loved ones? How can you ensure that they have one? 888-914-9149 or innerlife@relevantradio.com. A lot of good calls and emails continue to come in, Matthew. We're going to get to as many of them as we can here. Lauren writes in emails and says, hi, Patrick and Father Matthew. So very happy that you are back, Father Matthew. You have been in our prayers. Thanks for discussing this topic. Could you give some words of wisdom and encouragement for struggles with fear of suffering and death, or a near constant feeling of being faced with a health crisis like a brain bleed or a heart attack or other tragedies such as a car accident? I'd like to have reasonable acknowledgement of these things as possibilities, but what to do when these fears start to take over and become unreasonable?
Oh, that's a good topic. Thanks, Lauren, for sending in your message. Patrick, I think there's normal human fears that we can have, but sometimes those fears can be exacerbated by anxiety or by our own weakness in our psyche or in even our spiritual life. And I think the first thing I thought of when Lauren was sharing this is that part of the struggle that we have when we're kind of feeling this barrage of fears in a lot of different things, of the unknown, but also like, well, what if I die of a brain bleed? What if I get hit by a car when I'm walking down the street?
Right.
That's definitely not how we should be living, right? We shouldn't be these fears and worries and preoccupations shouldn't be consuming our day. And if that's the case, then we might need to talk to somebody about it, right? We might need a little bit of perspective from a counselor or something like that, somebody like that who can help us understand why are we focusing on these fears. I'm not saying that's where Lauren's coming from, but it's worth considering that if there's anxiety and a lot of fears that are just a little bit over the top about possibilities that might happen, then you might want to talk to somebody about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's normal for everybody, I think, to experience fear at the end of life. And I think it's pretty normal to also experience fear at the prospect of suffering. Mm-hmm. And that's because suffering is very hard, right? Suffering, especially when it's an unknown kind of suffering, it can bring a lot of difficulty to our life and a lot of uncertainty to how we're going to handle it. I think what we have to do, Patrick, is stop, take a breath, take a deep breath, and then we try to, little by little, accept and embrace the suffering that God gives to us and allows to us. And it doesn't mean that we don't do anything to try and remedy it. If you're going through serious chemotherapy, then you should be talking to your doctor about the sufferings that come with that and trying to mitigate the effects of that treatment, for example. If you go experience migraine headaches, you should talk to your doctor about finding some treatment for those. But also, I think we should recognize that as followers of Jesus, we're going to suffer. And suffering, when we can embrace it and really unite it to the cross of Christ, is not easy, but it becomes meaningful. It becomes understandable because we're sharing in the cross of Jesus Christ. I have experienced this in many different times in my life, I think, Patrick, where there's a suffering that I didn't expect, and then it works out that it helps me out, right? It helps me to see life differently. It helps me to be more sympathetic towards others. It helps me to let go of my desire that I'm never in pain throughout the day, right? And we allow the cross of Christ to kind of sanctify our own approach to life and to instruct how we embrace and accept pain and suffering and difficulty in our life.
Yeah.
So I think we do it, Patrick. I guess I could summarize that by saying we do it calmly, right? We do it one moment at a time, one day at a time. If you had said to me when I was 10 years old, well, these are the sufferings that you're going to have to go through in life, I would have said, okay, what's the point? I don't want to go through any of that, right?
Sure, right.
But here I am. I'm happy. I'm blessed. I'm grateful that God has given me lots of opportunities to also suffer. And I think that happens because one day at a time, it's possible to embrace those crosses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. All through your response there, Father, which I thought was very well put together. But I'm picturing Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. His suffering is before him. He's having the sins of the world laid upon his back, and he says, "Father, please let it pass from me. So it's not as if he's saying, oh yeah, it's fine, just whatever comes. He's acknowledging the difficulty, the great difficulty, the challenge, the trial, the suffering that he's undergoing even already at that point, and he's asking for relief. But at the same time, but what does he default to? But not my will, but yours be done, because it seems like having a happy death means submitting ourselves to the will of the Father.
Yeah, and I think kind of you intimated this, Patrick, but I think sometimes the suffering that we experience is not just the physical pain we go through,
Right.
but we suffer because of the uncertainty of what is to come, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
We're suffering when we don't know where the diagnosis is going to take us. We suffer when we don't know what's going to happen to our children. We suffer when we're not sure how life is going to unfold. And that's a real suffering, right? That takes away our peace at times. It really leaves us in anguish. And I think that too is something we can offer to Jesus, right? We can look and say, wow, I'm suffering because of this uncertainty in life. And Lord, I offer this to you, and the Lord will be with us in that.
Amen. He certainly will.